Welcome to episode 14 of the Wheels and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Ben Durham, and today we have Sheryl Rooth here as our guest.
I'm Sheryl Rooth. I'm a Londoner. I'm married to John, and I have two children who are grown up and on their own. And I work in social services. I'm an avid cyclist and mobility advocate.
She's been a commissioner with the London Transit Commission for the last 10 years, and for the last 5 years, getting around on two wheels for commuting, shopping, errands, doctor's appointments, recreation, and just everything pretty much. Every time she hops on her bike, she explores new parts of the city that are just straight up inaccessible from the seat of a car. She's found a new freedom and confidence from cycling that she didn't know she had, especially because arthritis in her knee has recently reduced her ability to walk. But pedaling a bicycle is such a low-impact activity that it's given freedom back to her. In this episode, we talk about a range of topics, including how she's seen more of London in the last 5 years of bicycling than she saw in the previous 56 years, how ladies who are over 55 years of age should definitely try getting out on a bike, how bike lanes have changed the way that she moves around the city, how the Thames Valley Parkway has been an amazing experience for her, and so much more. All right, let's dive in. Ooh, so when you say avid cyclist, I know a lot of people in the news say, I'm an avid cyclist, and that's why we don't need bike lanes or something like that. When you say that, are you more of like a utility cyclist, or are you a recreational cyclist? What category are you, Cheryl?
I'm all of the above.
Okay.
So I cycle for exercise. I cycle for my mental health, definitely. I cycle to work. So that's my main mode of transportation if I'm not walking or taking transit. And I use it for all of my errands. Like when I go to the grocery store, if I have a doctor's appointment, whatever, I'm riding my bike. As long as it's a safe way for me to get there, I'm riding my bike.
So you are an avid cyclist.
I am. I never used to be, but I am now.
And what was that switch?
When I was a kid, I learned how to ride my bicycle behind Lady Beck Public School with my dad when I was about 5, and rode through my early teens and things until my bicycle got stolen, and then I just kind of got away from it. And then as an adult, I had children, and cycling just wasn't an option. I didn't feel, and London definitely was not a safe place to cycle at that time. And then in the last probably 5 or 6 years, I got the courage to get out on my bike again. And I used my husband's old rickety bike that he had, and I probably put about 300 or 400 kilometers on that sucker. Then invested in a really good city-style bicycle that I got at the London Bicycle Cafe. And terrific resource if you're new to cycling and not sure exactly what you want to buy or what you should be buying for your usage. That was not a plug by any stretch. I'm just saying it was a good resource for me.
It happens a lot.
Yes. And then I started meeting people who were cyclists and just started sharing stories and routes and that kind of thing. What really got me using my bike a lot more, though, were the new bike lanes that are getting put in. And I have seen more of this city that I have lived in my entire life in the last 5 years than I have in the last 56 years. So it's been a real blessing. Like, these bike lanes have literally changed the way I move around this city and has literally changed the way that I interact with my city. So I'm on the Thames Valley Parkway. I think I've maybe at one point seen a block of it. Now I ride the whole entire thing at least once a month, which is about, I don't know, I think it's like 45K or something like that.
Wow.
So once a month, right? That's my exercise, one of my exercises. And it's a revolutionary experience to ride on the Thames Valley Parkway from one end to the other, because it's like going from one place in the world to another, because you never know what you're going to get. You're going to go through different kinds of forests, and you're going to go by the river, and you're going to go through wild fields of flowers and bees and all of that kind of stuff. And you're going to ride past really kind people who say good morning or good afternoon or, hey, how you doing? Like, there's people out there who are actively exercising and actively getting into nature just like you are. But it's really hard to put into words unless you've rode your bike or walked down the Thames Valley Parkway. The different smells, right?
Yep. Yeah.
The smell of fog and mist in the morning, the smell of the river after a rain, the smell of the leaves and the grass, and it's remarkable. And the temperature changes from
Oh
one
my
section
goodness.
to the next.
You don't get that in a vehicle because
do
like
not.
the ups and the downs and through the forest, and yeah, no, that's something. And you mentioned the smells, and I do want to say the selection bias. I think that that's actually what it is when you go on the TVP, you're actually like the other people who have chosen to go out onto the TVP are your people.
They are. Yeah.
It's selection bias.
Yeah. And when they extended the bridge from the North London Fields and they put the 2 bridges in, total game changer.
Absolutely. Before there was a path that almost went there, and I ended up there several times because it just is such a natural way to go east-west, and it just wasn't there. And then when it got put in, my mind was blown. I love that. We used it so much. Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful ride. And to stop on the bridges and watch the ducks and the geese and, seeing people fishing and that is just a treat. You're not going to get that walking anywhere on a city street. It's like being in a whole other little town.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So that really enticed me to ride my bike a lot more, especially on the TVP. But again, it's finding a way to get there safely that is a challenge sometimes. But really, like, I'm very cognizant of where I'm riding my bicycle. I would say without the bike lanes on Dundas Street, I wouldn't be here today. I would not have ventured downtown unless I took the TVP, which would be another 20 minutes out of my way to get here.
Yeah, for you have to head ever so slightly north and then like wind a little bit and get to the TVP, and then now you can take the winding TVP to downtown. So it would be, I think 20 minutes extra.
At least, And I wouldn't have selected this location. We would have done something close to my house because that would have been my fear zone. Right. I know I'm okay on this street and this street and this street, but being able to go onto the Colburn bike lane, the Cheapside bike lane, then the Colburn bike lane and the Dundas bike lane, I am not in traffic, right? I'm in a relatively safe place and I feel very secure riding those bike lanes because there is
you're allocated the space. Yeah,
Yes.
at least on Colburn, there's the safety there.
Cheapside, not so much.
Yeah.
But Colburn and Dundas, definitely.
So you are one of the people who are like in my side of the city. And so you use Cheapside a lot, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And we do too. It's our gateway to the rest of the city as people on bikes. And so it's great to hear that. But how do you feel about it? We're fairly confident, like cyclists, but that just means that fewer people might take that route, which is a very key route. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Cheapside, I take Cheapside east every day to work, pretty much.
Okay.
And I have to get out of the bike lane, an unprotected bike lane, and get to a turning lane. Very, very busy. And now with the construction at Highbury and Oxford, Cheapside is bumper to bumper traffic. So it's very difficult to navigate from that bike lane to that turning lane. For the most part, drivers are very respectful. They'll leave me space to get through, or I will just wait until I see a break in the traffic to get through. But again, I think if you're a driver and you see a cyclist, even in the bike lane, stopped at the side of the road, that's not great either. So there's ways to improve. And I mean, I could keep going down Cheapside and going past Highbury, past, wherever, to try and find a place to turn and stay on the bike lane. But again, not convenient. And also, Cheapside is such bumper to bumper traffic now. It would take me 3 times as long probably to get to where I needed to go. So Cheapside isn't great in that section in that regard, but it's a fairly wide lane and it's a fairly well-maintained spot. So I would say if anyone's comfortable riding on the street, they would be relatively comfortable riding in that bike lane.
And then when you go into Colburn, what are your thoughts there?
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I never realized until I started riding that intersections are on hills.
Oh.
There's an incline on every intersection, obviously to avoid having puddles collect and that kind of thing.
Yep.
I never realized it until I'm like slugging up Oxford and Colburn after a 30K ride and I'm trying to get it's a moderate incline, but it's still enough that you're like, oh my gosh. And you know that there's someone waiting to turn right or left, or, you just feel like you're in the way sometimes. And then if you have an aggressive person behind you or someone without any patience, it can be a little bit daunting. But other than that, the Colburn cycle lanes are amazing. Amazing. Especially when you get to go downhill.
Oh my goodness, it's so much fun.
It's fantastic.
And you get it both ways, whether you're coming out of downtown, headed north, and when you're headed down to downtown, south, and you get down to the train tracks, and then you have to slug it back up.
Yeah. But honestly, I really like it. I'm not a fan of the people who live on Colburn who rake all of their leaves into the bike lane. Please stop doing that, because you can't see what's underneath, right? If there's glass or something dangerous, it's going to stop your bike.
Yep.
But I love it.
Also, I heard recently from Holly, who has the Urban Arrow, that leaves are not great for skids as well, because if you are doing any sort of turning or braking on leaves, which luckily Colburn is straight, so there's that. As long as you don't hit your brakes while on leaves, you should be good. But otherwise,
very slippery.
Just don't do that. It's like ice almost.
It really is, yes. Yep. And I find that on the TBP too. There's some spots that have the best hills to go down. But in this time of year, you have to be extra careful, because you could hit that one patch of leaves and you'd be in the river.
Just what? Yeah. You keep on going.
Yeah. Lessons learned for sure.
Okay, so we covered the TVP. We covered how you kind of got back into cycling because of the protected infrastructure. And you were on stage over at the museum at one point, and you were mentioning that also just the community, seeing yes, I'm going to say it again, the bike cafe, the Loaded Bicycle Cafe, providing other options to people other than I really have it out for Canadian Tire mountain bikes. They're just the least efficient, worst way of getting around. They are affordable, but then they break down, etc.
They do, yeah.
So, and they just have high resistance and all of that. But once the Bicycle Cafe came in and said, hey, here are some options, and started to foster a community,
yes,
it was just night and day. So aside from the London Bicycle Cafe, you were mentioning when you were on stage, the community and how it helped you.
Yeah.
Wanted to elaborate on that?
I was invited to a few different cycling groups, just through different friends and things, and just for data collection and that kind of thing. And I really got to see that cyclists it wasn't just that group of, granola eaters, or it wasn't the Lycra people on the weekend, right? It was people like me who wanted a way to get around their city in a different way. And there are a lot of groups. It's not just a bicycle cafe. There are a lot of groups in London that are doing tremendous advocacy for cyclists and getting people engaged and involved. And just being able to see myself in this group of people really made a difference. Even coming here this morning, I was waiting at the light at Dundas and Wellington, and I heard this little ring behind me, and someone comes up, "Hey, neighbor," and it was my friend Paul on his bike as well.
Of course.
But again, someone who has been cycling forever, right? And who I would put in the granola category people, because Paul is just that guy. But again, having someone who's close to my age, close to my interests, and who's just a really wonderful human being, we share something in common in this, in cycling, and it helps create a safe space for people. Whether you're a new cyclist or you've been riding for 50 years, right? You want to have a place where you belong and where you feel protected and safe, and that what you have to say matters.
And what you have to say, does it matter? Do you feel?
I think it matters. I think I speak for a lot of 55 and up ladies who are hopping on their bicycles maybe for the first time, or maybe for the first time in 20 or 30 years, because they're feeling like they have a safe place to ride too.
I guess this is more of a global question or a global answer. So for those ladies of 55 over, what would you want them to know getting into cycling? Who were in exactly your situation before?
I would say This is something that Tom Flood, who's a tremendous advocate, has said. Bicycles deliver the freedom that car ads promise. 100%. That's absolutely true. And if you are a person, of my age who is thinking about getting a bicycle, I would say do it. Get your courage, because that, for me, that was a big part of it. I don't know if I have the courage to ride out on the streets. There's so many cars and trucks and things like that. Get your courage. Find your place on the road, whether it's in a protected bike lane or in your own little neighborhood. You're going to see your city in a completely different way. You're going to get exercise and cardio, and you're going to build a confidence that you probably didn't know you were missing.
I actually want to ask, right before we get to the other topic that we're here for, which you brought up, and I really like that topic, maybe right now is the perfect time to ask about your knee. Or is it knees? Or I actually don't know. This is the first time I'm asking, really.
Oh, okay.
I asked if I could talk about it, and that's all. And
It's all good. So I have advanced osteoarthritis in my right knee.
Okay.
And it came on very suddenly, the impact of it. I was doing 3 or 4, 5Ks a week and, cycling, and then my knee just popped one day. And walking is incredibly difficult for me, even with, braces and canes and things. My mobility is limited in that way.
And those 5Ks, were those running or cycling?
Walking.
Okay, so
walking
you were
5Ks.
Okay, so walking, and so then boom. Okay, that's good to know.
So finding exercises and things that I could do without tremendous pain or pain that would last for days was very, very difficult. And then the more I got on my bike, the more I realized the impact is low on my joints, and I can commit to an hour and a half ride, sometimes 2-hour rides, and not have that residual pain for hours and days later. And the endorphins that you get from having that great ride is super helpful too. Yeah. But it's made the difference from me being isolated and limiting what I want to do in my life to doing pretty much everything that I wanted to do.
That's actually amazing to hear. So I really wanted to ask that.
Even I ride my bike to my physiotherapist, and she's like, "Oh, you rode your bike here?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "How far is it?" I think it was like 3 or 4K. It wasn't a lot. She said, "That's good. That's good. Keep riding your bike," and I will, as long as I possibly can. I will. And as other parts of my body start to develop this arthritis too, I know that my bike is there, and it's going to get me to the grocery store on the day that I cannot walk to the grocery store. I can ride my bike there. I'm going to fill my baskets with a week's worth of groceries, and I'm going to ride home, and I'm going to put everything away, and I'm going to make dinner, and I'm not going to be having to sit on my chair for a half an hour just trying to regroup from the pain. So it's been a great asset in that regard.
And even here, when we were setting up, you're like, "Okay, I have 2 baskets," which are actually pretty awesome.
They're
right over there. Anyways, we're not going to bring them out, but they're the metal wire baskets, and they plop right on.
They hook on the rack on the back of my bike.
Yeah, and so you're like targeting. You're like, "Okay, what do I want to pick up here?
Yeah, what do I need? What do I want?" Culverts, cream puffs are right on that list. But I also have a brief bag as well, like a briefcase that hooks onto my knapsack for work. I can put my laptop in there.
It's the double-sided one, right? Or?
No, it's just a one side.
Okay.
And it's fairly wide. Like I can put my laptop, my cord, all my binders and things I need for work, and off I go to work.
That's cool. And because it's one-sided, if one day you wanted to bring the wire one,
I can bring both.
One wire and one briefcase.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's awesome.
Oh yeah, I probably mentioned this way at the beginning, but we are at the Covent Garden Market today. We stole this table and just plopped it over here, and
here we are.
We'll put it back after. Okay, so now for the topic that you came for to discuss, and I'm just going to read it out because I read this and I was like, yes, this needs to be talked about. You said that you wanted to talk about the dangers of the, quote, "I hate cyclists," end quote, rhetoric, and how it creates a disassociation between the bicycle and the human riding it. And I think that's brilliant, partially because of what's happening in politics in Ontario right now, but we can not talk about that unless you want to. But yeah, go on.
I saw a Facebook post a few weeks ago about someone was complaining about the Colburn cycle lanes and how he never sees a cyclist on it. And then you had a bunch of people piling on I hate cyclists. They're always in the way. They never stop at stop signs. They never do all A, B, and C. And I'm reading all of these things and everybody's chiming in because, I found someone who agrees with me. So I'm going to keep responding to those posts. And the more I watched it, the more I realized that you never once called these people riding bicycles. You never once referred to them as people riding bicycles. It was cyclists, cycle, that kind of thing.
That is actually why at the top of the conversation, I asked, so you say you're an avid cyclist. What do you mean by that? Because, when people say cyclist, they think of the mammals, the spandex-clad guys on road bikes.
Right. So I posted to the one gentleman who put the original post on Facebook, and I said, well, I'm taking Colburn tomorrow. I'll wave when I go by. And he liked it. Like he did. There wasn't any blowback or anything from that. But the more I read the comments, the more I realized that not one person really identified what their issue was with a human being. And I think the more that people hear the I hate cyclist rhetoric, the more they disconnect from the mom, the dad, the high schooler, the little kid, the senior citizen who is just wanting to get out and get around their city in their own way, just as the person in the vehicle would. So when you make those little errors and you're frustrated and you're pushing up to a cyclist at a stop sign, or you're racing around someone because you desperately have to turn right and can't wait the 3 seconds for me to get into the intersection, you now have disconnected that I'm a person and that I matter and that I matter to other people. And you don't see the consequences of that. You don't understand the fear that you've instilled in me because you've made that choice, because you don't identify me as a human being.
I have to say, so you said the words like the instilling of the fear. And I actually got a little bit of goosebumps there because it actually is something that I genuinely think that drivers do not comprehend. Yeah. When you have a close call, it is like frightening. Mm-hmm. And when you know that the driver has the control because they could just mow you over in a half a second if they were really angry at you or something. Yep. It's terrifying. It really is. I know we say vulnerable road users, but no, seriously, like it can be very frightening.
I think we can all give experiences as cyclists of close calls that we've had. And I know for my husband, he gets a little freaked out every time that I hop on my bicycle and go for a ride. The last thing he says to me every time is, be careful. And if I weren't careful, I'd probably be dead by now. And that's not to say that there aren't cyclists who are careless, who don't stop at stop signs, who, don't follow even the most common sense rules of the road. I don't think that's the majority. Because if we don't, we die. It's as simple as that. If, I was saying to you earlier when I was coming here, I have to go through probably at least 10 four-way stops to get downtown from my house. If I didn't stop at those four-ways, this morning was extremely foggy and people were driving with no lights on and, just racing through small residential areas. If I didn't stop, I would have been hit at least twice on the way here. So I take responsibility for my own riding. I had to think 3 steps ahead as a cyclist. If I'm coming to an intersection, okay, is everyone stopping? Is it okay for me to go? And I also have to be aware of bumps in the road and potholes and garbage and debris and all kinds of things while I'm going. So as a bike rider or a cyclist, our senses are so heightened for everything. And so it makes me laugh when I hear, cyclists don't care, they're not paying attention. Believe me, we are. We have to.
And at the same point, right there in the morning, you mentioned that drivers are driving without their lights on when it's extraordinarily foggy. For context, we couldn't see 15 feet? What is it, 10 meters?
10
no,
meters.
Less. I don't know. Something like that. It was very, very foggy. At the same time, you mentioned earlier, and now I'm going to be very cognizant of this, that the intersections also have it so that they are raised. Yeah. So you're approaching an intersection, and intersections are the most dangerous places to be. So you're already slower, and then traffic can't see you because apparently drivers are blind. I say this because yesterday we were driving our vehicle that we occasionally drive, and there's this, I just want to go off of this, but the rhetoric of, you need to always be a flamboyantly dressed cyclist or pedestrian. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm a driver, and there were kids crossing the road in front of me, and I saw it from a mile away. They were wearing black. They had white shoes, so I did see the bloop, bloop, bloop.
Yeah.
But like, so that caught my eye, sure, but you're a driver. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Like, I have the dash cam. I should make a compilation at some point because I hit it whenever I have this happen. I do that because sometimes it's a cyclist who's wearing black. Right. Sometimes it's a pedestrian or a wheelchair user, and they're, I don't know, not blending in because that's not how motion works.
Yeah.
But if you're a driver, pay attention. Like, I just don't get that where people are saying, hey, like Haley was saying, what were they wearing? It's like, what do you mean that you ran into the person and you didn't see them? So I don't know. I'm going off on a little tangent there, but it's just that the dehumanization of people outside of cars is a problem.
It is a problem, and it's easy to say, well, you weren't wearing a reflective vest, or you weren't, I don't even know. You weren't even you weren't in the bike lane, or on my street, my residential street. There's quite a few people that park on the street overnight. It's just fine. So I'm coming home from work. I have a car coming up behind me, and I'm trying to get around these 3 cars. It's just a 2-lane street. It's not like an extra wide area. I'm trying to get around these cars that are on the street, and I'm trying to avoid getting doored because I can't see, because the windows are so tinted in these vehicles. I can't see if someone's sitting in the front seat or not. So I've taken the lane and maybe an extra foot. And this car comes up behind me, blaring on the horn, going like this, like I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go, but to move over.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do?
Only for her to race up, cut out in front of me, and pull into her driveway.
Oh my God. So it's a neighbor. That's even worse.
It maybe saved her all of 4 seconds out of her whole day. But again, if you're not a cyclist, you're not thinking about getting doored or some little kid running out, or, the things that squirrels even, things you have to think about as a cyclist. For you to just wait for me to pass these 3 cars would have taken 4 seconds, and I would have taken back over to the curb where it's logically where I should be.
Well, like within the 1 meter-ish of the curb area. Yeah. What you said there about the children popping out, like that's, regardless of if you were there, why was she flooring it past those cars ever? Like the speed limits. Anyways, that's a whole other topic. But
well, and then every day I drive down that street, I'm like, is she coming? Is she coming? Because now I'm extra hyper vigilant because I don't want to be behind or in front of this person because I know they're going to take a risk, and it's going to be at my expense, not hers. So we all have stories like this, and I think it's just a matter of mutual understanding between drivers and what cyclists go through on the road to get where they want to go, and for all of the amazing things that you get back from cycling, it just takes that one experience to really scare you into going. And you know what, I really hesitated coming down here today because I have a vacation coming up in 2 weeks that I've been very much looking forward to. And I thought, if I get hit or I get hurt, my vacation's ruined. Not to mention the rehab of all of that stuff. But now I'm not going to go on my vacation. But again, I sat and I thought about my route and what secure bike lanes or protected bike lanes I was going to take to get here, and rationalized, okay, you're going to be good. So, but you have to do that. You have to always be thinking 3 steps ahead. It's so frustrating sometimes. In my own neighborhood, 20 meters from my house, I'm almost run down on a daily now because everyone's detouring Highbury and Oxford and racing down my street because they're mad because they have to wait in this line. So now they're racing through a neighborhood that they don't know. And then they're coming up to dead-end streets, and then they're spinning around, and I'm riding my bike.
Yeah, just doing your thing.
Right. Now I have an angry person in a 3,000-pound vehicle charging at me, doesn't know me, doesn't care to know me, But because now I'm an obstacle in their way.
Dehumanization. There we go.
Dehumanization.
You are not a human on a bicycle. You are an obstacle.
obstacle.
Get the frickin' heck out of the way.
Yeah.
Put simply.
I'm late for work.
Exactly. And it's your fault. And oh my God, you cost me 3 whole seconds. Although the red light is going to hold you up for a minute or
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
It's like, and the traffic, which they are part of.
Yeah.
Yep. It is endless.
Yes. So when we hear our premier wanting to remove the power of municipalities to put in their own bike lanes, to make their own choices for mobility, and I think of London, and we're doing this massive mobility study. And now we have a premier saying, doesn't matter what cyclists want to do. I'm going to dictate what cyclists get to do. The man who never has probably been on a bicycle in his life or had to ride anywhere on a bicycle, but now he knows what's best for the entire province and our cyclists and people who are thinking about cycling or who want their kids to ride their bikes to school. That is extremely frustrating to me, not on just a municipal level where you have to trust your mayors and city council and your incredible, talented, educated staff that you hire purposely because of all of these things that they offer, taking that power away from them, who've done the studies, who've done the conversations, who've done the work to ensure we have accessible mobility for everybody, to having a premier say, no, because I know there's a collective group of people that are supporting me that hate these bike lanes. So I'm going to, focus on their needs as opposed to an entire province's needs for mobility access. It's such a waste of time and money and effort, but when you're shooting at the lowest common denominator, you're going to hit your target pretty much every time.
Funny thing, reducing taxes, blah, 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 all of that. This will not do that because guess what? Whole new department needed, more bureaucracy. There are 52 different cities plus a bunch of towns and other municipalities within Ontario. Mm-hmm. Now, every one of those has to backtrack 5 years, explain why they put in the bike lanes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of admin, and then everything going forward as well. You think that's going to save taxes? Yeah, right.
No.
Absolutely not. So that's just one tiny little aspect of it, along with all of the other headaches it's going to cause. It's ridiculous.
In a province where it's taken me a year to get an MRI, over 2 years for a surgical consult, I thought I'm still, waiting to hear. Now you want to remove the key mobility that I have in my city? It makes no sense at all to me. This should not be a priority at all. This should not even be on the radar of priority list. There's so many other things that are wrong in this province. Bike lanes are not the thing. If you have an issue in Toronto with bike lanes, then let your mayor, let your council, let your staff work on those problems. Maybe there are. I don't know. I don't cycle in Toronto. Mm-hmm. But as a premier, you're overreaching in your scope. And your scope is pretty large already. I'd be pulling it back a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's got good headlines, right? And again, you're feeding into that, I hate cyclists. My premier hates cyclists too. That may not be the case, but that's exactly the message that you're sending.
I have a lot of things to say about it. I don't know if this is the time or place, but I'll take 20 seconds to just be like, do you really think that taking the bike lane away is going to reduce gridlock on the 401? It's like, I'm sorry, what are you thinking? It literally does not make any sense at all in any way, shape, or form.
He's taken what is a mild inconvenience for some to creating an unfactored problem for all. It's not a problem for all. It's a problem for people who aren't happy with the fact that they've given up 2 feet of their boulevard, right? Or people who don't want anything but their own vehicles and their landscaping company on their street. Yeah, it's a problem for those people probably. But in the grand scheme of things, that 2 feet on your boulevard where the new Cheapside lane is gone, has it really created that much of a havoc for you? Probably not.
Okay, actually on the Colborne side, bringing it back to London for a second, I was on Street View the other day. I went back in time, as you can do on Street View. Very cool feature. And I went over to Colborne. It was gross. It actually just had the vibe of, wow, this is just another street. It had parking on, was it 1 or 2 sides? And yes, removing of the parking spots maybe contentious, but also there are driveways and parking lots. There are already the spots to park. And so it was very gross before, and I was imagining myself biking up and down Colburn on that. And I think I just took other routes at that time. And I just did not visit downtown as much, to be honest, because it just was not as accessible. I flipped back to the present day, which I know very well because of the bike lanes, and it just looks prettier too.
It does look
narrower. Nice. I know that a lot of people were complaining about like trucks not being able to turn, or I used to drive transport trailers. Don't go down that road.
Yeah, there's other roads.
There are other ways to do this. It doesn't have to be that every single road is accessible by every single type of transportation.
I think if the fire trucks have had no problem, we should be okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Again,
buses,
professional drivers.
I mean, there have been some issues with buses and signage and that kind of thing with the bollards, but again, it's a matter of getting used to something new. Right? And
which I can get.
And
like,
again,
understandable.
Maybe we can make some fine tuning to make these a little less problematic in some areas, but the amount of people that you're saving, the amount of people that you're taking off the street that are in your way as a driver, that should be a bonus to you. Like, you should be pretty happy that I'm not weaving in, from at the curb, a little bit over, at the curb, a little bit over. No, I'm on a bike lane that's not in your way.
Predictability is introduced with that bike lane.
Yeah.
Which makes it better for everyone.
It does. Safer.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we are approaching the end. Are there other bits that you would like to talk about?
I think as cyclists, let's just be more aware of the rules of the road, right? I don't want to be at a four-way stop and you go blowing through the intersection. That's not cool, right? You have to be aware of the rules of the road, and you have to follow them just like everybody else does. Don't be weaving in and out of cars and being a nuisance. Like, even for myself, even when I'm pulling off of the sidewalk to get onto the Cheaptown bike lane, I wait until there is no car or vehicle coming that way, just so that I'm not startling anybody. I'm not pulling out really quickly. It's just little things that make a big difference. It makes a big difference in your safety and the comfort level of the person who's driving a massive vehicle beside you. And for the most part, I will say drivers are very respectful of cyclists, and I think there's a general understanding of the dangers. But as more cyclists come on the road and as we venture more out into our city, there's going to be some conflict, and you just need to be aware of that. But I would say to anyone who just strictly drives and never rides a bike, go on the bike and see what it's like, and get a different perspective and see a little more of your city, because you're missing a whole lot when you're behind the wheel of a car. There's just so much out there to experience and enjoy that you are never going to get inside your car.
And if you are going to do it for a commute, think of average speed rather than top speed, because, well, your average speed as a driver stuck in traffic, not that high. So if you're like, oh, well, I can't bike because it's going to take too long. Actually, it might not take much longer. So what I would say, if you are going to take that leap, is don't do it on a work day as the first time. Try it out here and there. Do it around your neighborhood. Figure out your bike. Do all of that. That's it for the day. Then the next day, maybe go out and be like, I'm going to do a fake commute or things like that. That's what I always advise with, like, when you're switching or trying out. And the other thing is, you don't have to go all in. You don't have to not drive every day. Like, you can alternate. You can try out. Or if it gets cold, you know what? Sure, drive. Why not? Although it is very nice. It was like 1 degree this morning, and we both biked here.
We did, yeah. It was beautiful.
It was. I was kind of worried because I'm like, whoa, it dropped like 15 degrees since I last biked, like, yesterday. Like, it was t-shirt weather yesterday, and now it's like winter jacket. Okay, not quite that, but
well, you just dress for it, right? You just put on some layers, and away you go. Get some gloves or some mittens, and it's all good. Like, was it Queen Elizabeth that said there's no bad weather, it's just bad preparation or something like that? And it's true. I have ponchos. I have a poncho that covers my whole bike and my baskets. I have a raincoat. I ride all year with the exception of when it's snowy and icy. I'm not comfortable riding those days. But it takes me 8 minutes to ride to work. 8 minutes.
Dang, that is quick.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Carve out an hour on the weekend. You'll be amazed at how much you can see. But you're right. Start slow. Maybe your first trip is to a little bakery in your neighborhood that you keep meaning to go to, but now you're going to go as a purposeful visit. And then next time you're going to go maybe another kilometer farther. And then the next thing you're going to stop and pick up something for dinner. You're going to find all these little treasures along the way and experience so much more of your city than you ever imagined. Yeah.
Give yourself permission to take it easy.
Yes.
I think that's a
Have fun.
good one. Yeah, exactly. So there's that. Just because you mentioned tinted windows in passing, I was going to bring this up and I'm just remembering it now. People see that I'm farther away from like cars and they wonder why. Like, why am I taking the lane? Or in your case, you're passing so you don't get doored. So people are like, oh, well, like, just look in the mirrors. I can obviously, like, these are literal comments in the videos that I put out. And they're like, just look in the mirrors, you silly person will say. And just look in the mirrors, and here you are bringing up the tint. I'm like, I didn't even think of that, because those are tiny little mirrors. If you're if you're the one looking into mirrors, that's not how physics and degrees and sight lines work.
Right.
The mirrors are there for the drivers because they're closer. But as a cyclist, you're not looking in every single mirror.
You don't have time to look in a mirror.
Like, what are you? Yeah.
Even if you're going 5 or 10K, right? By the time you get around the car and even close to that mirror, you can't see it. If the window's tinted, forget it. You're not seeing anything anyway.
Which you don't know until you are doored.
Right. And then if I'm still coming this way and I'm trying to look in this dude's mirror and then I'm trying to see if any oncoming traffic is coming, what?
Yeah, what are they expecting? Like, that is a very...
I'm not a superhero. I'm just a person on a bicycle.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the solution to that is, don't get doored by just giving a little bit more space. So then when, I heard that and the tinted windows and stuff, and you're at the intersection, we were talking about the fog. I just wanted to wrap this up, which is the fact that it's foggy, their lights aren't on, and there's like the incline at the intersections and all of that. And then you go and you're like waiting for the driver who's like, no, you can go. And you can't see because it's a tinted window. And then they're like, why can't they see me? It's like, because you have a tinted window. You are the driver of this vehicle. You decided to get this tinted. This is on you. No one can see you. It's a tinted window.
Yeah. That's the other thing I would say too, is when you're in that situation where the driver's like, no, go. You got to stick to the rules of the road, because not every person is going to be generous to say, yes, go ahead, or I'm going to wait for you. Especially if you can't see around a vehicle, if they're in a turning lane or whatever, you can't see all the oncoming traffic. Just say, yeah, thank you anyway, or motion for them to go, right? It's so important to just stick to the rules of the road. That's why they're there, and be aware of what they are.
I know Haley called this out, and I didn't even realize that I subconsciously did it. When that happens, when there's the standstill, I just pretend to not see them and be fiddling with my bike or something like entirely different, or adjusting my helmet, or like looking at anywhere else. I'm just waiting. And if I were to go, and if they were to go, I would be in the wrong, because the right of way exists for a reason. And then you're in the wrong. Boom.
Yeah.
So be in the right.
Yeah. And you also don't know what that person behind him is thinking too. Like, they're going to get angry, or they're frustrated, and they're going to whip out real quickly, and you're going to get smacked. So
exactly.
It's just, there's just so much sometimes. But it's always worth it. Every ride, I never get off my bike saying, God, I wish I never got on my bike today. I am always glad that I did. I'm always glad that I got up and I got mobile and got to move around in the best way possible.
I approve. Well, thank you very much for
welcome.
Sitting down with me at the Covent Garden Market. This was very fun. That wraps everything up.
Okay.
I feel like we should chat again at some point, but it sounds like, oh no, I'm going to open up another topic. At some point, you'll be in Halifax, so I'll just have to visit you.
Yes, absolutely. Where they have lots of bike lanes and lots of really cool infrastructure for cycling.
And on that note, bye.